Would you let a doll feed on your child if it promised to cure them of an incurable disease? The fog never fully lifted over Shirahama, a forgotten village perched high in the mountains of Wakayama, surrounded by gnarled trees and the constant drip of water, even when it wasn't raining. That's where Akari lived, a nurse forced to return to the village after her older sister's tragic death. She brought along her 7-year-old daughter, May, a frail child with a rare degenerative disease that modern medicine couldn't explain. Her muscles were wasting away, as if her body was slowly refusing to exist. Soon after they arrived, Akari noticed the neighbors watching her with strange looks, a mix of pity and anticipation. Their smiles were too wide, their gazes lingered too long. There was something about the way they spoke of a cure, like it was an ancient, almost sacred secret. On the third night, an old man named Mr. Fushimi knocked on her door, carrying a black wooden box. Inside was an antique porcelain doll, human hair stitched into its scalp, milky glass eyes, and a stained dress that seemed to breathe when no one was looking. "She can help your daughter," he said, "but she needs to be fed." Skeptical, Akari tried to return the doll, but when she left it on the porch, the next morning it was back inside May's room. And bigger, the doll now had teeth, not fake ones. Human baby teeth. Akari started hearing her daughter's voice in the dead of night, whispering, talking to the doll as if it were answering. And somehow, May began to improve. She walked without help, ate on her own, smiled. But at the local school, 3 children vanished in a single week. The village seemed unbothered. The searches were half-hearted. And Akari began to notice the doll changing after each disappearance, growing inches at a time, its eyes becoming wetter, its joints more lifelike. When she tried to get rid of it again, she found bite marks on her daughter's pillow. Small, circular, deep. The horror crept in slowly, raw, unseen. One night, Akari woke to the sound of wet chewing coming from May's room. When she opened the door, the doll was sitting on her daughter's chest, motionless, but its chin was smeared with something dark and thick. The room reeked, a sickeningly sweet, putrid stench, like rotting meat mixed with curdled milk. May was awake, her eyes wide and glassy, staring at the ceiling as if frozen between sleep and death. Her lips moved faintly, repeating something inaudible over and over like a broken record. Akari ran to her, shoving the doll hard against the wall. The sound of the impact was hollow, as if the doll's body wasn't ceramic but filled with fleshy cavities. May, honey, look at me." The girl blinked slowly, her eyes dull. Then she murmured, in a voice that didn't sound like hers. She was hungry. Just a little. From the inside. May's chest rose and fell slowly, but her skin was paler than ever, and a dark trickle oozed from one of her ears. Her shirt was stained near her stomach. When Akari lifted the fabric, she saw something had gnawed away part of the girl's navel. There was no open wound, but the hole looked like it had been carved by tiny teeth. The doll, tossed into the corner, had already propped itself back up, sitting upright on its own. Its eyes were even more sunken, as if they'd been scooped out from the inside with a hot spoon. And it was smiling. Now there were teeth visible. Small, baby teeth, each one in the wrong place. The next day, Akari tried to leave the village. She took the car and drove for hours, but Shirahama's roads seemed to loop back on themselves. Every turn brought the same black-roofed house into view, the same cracked bamboo sign, the same blind dog crossing the road, dragging its hind legs. She returned home with dry eyes and a throat raw from screaming. May wasn't in her bed anymore. She was in the living room, kneeling on the tatami mat in front of the doll. And in the girl's hands wasn't a toy. It was a tooth, small, still bleeding at the root, her first baby tooth. She said, "This is the start. I'm going to be like her." Akari tried to destroy the doll. She set it on fire, doused it with alcohol, smashed it with a hammer, stabbed it with a knife, even used salt and ancient prayers she found in a notebook hidden in the family shrine. But the doll always came back. One morning, she found it on the table with new strands of hair sewn into its scalp, long, black, silky, identical to May's. Next to it, an empty plate. On it, traces of a child's fingernail with chipped blue glitter polish. That night, Akari dreamed of the forest. The trees had eyes. From the ground, children's hands sprouted, grabbing at her legs like hungry living roots. At the top of the mountain, the doll loomed, massive, its body made of countless mouths, each one speaking with a different child's voice, all chanting in unison, "You promised, you feed us now." Akari woke with the sensation of something wet slithering under her skin. She scratched her arm until it bled, and beneath the skin, there were stitches, tiny, just like the ones she'd seen so many times on the doll's body. In the mirror, her silhouette trembled. Something moved behind her eyes. May was no longer in the house, but the doll was, sitting in the center of the tatami, with a new tooth sprouting from its gums, an adult tooth. She realized too late what was really happening. The doll didn't just feed. It replaced piece by piece, tooth by tooth, eye by eye, flesh by flesh. And now it wanted to be Akari. That early morning, the woman woke up sitting on the tatami with no memory of how she got there. In front of her was the doll, or what was left of its original form, now bearing a face almost identical to hers. There were flaws, like a faulty mold. One eye was slightly lower. The chin was disproportionate, but the hair, the skin tone, even the slight crook in the nose. It was all hers. "It's not complete yet," May's voice murmured, though she wasn't there. Akari tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't respond. Her body felt numb, as if she'd been sleeping on ice. Her hands shook. She tried to crawl, but the floor clung to her skin like a rough, living tongue. And then she realized the tatami was breathing. The ancestral house was alive. The bones, the wood, the walls, all made from the remains of those who had been consumed. Every door, a tomb, every beam a femur, the altar, a cradle of skulls, soaked in empty prayers. The doll approached, one step at a time, its knees cracking like dry branches. The sound of teeth grinding echoed through the walls. It held something in its hands, the antique mirror that had belonged to Akari's grandmother. When the woman saw her reflection, she didn't recognize herself. It was her, but it wasn't. Her eyes were no longer in the right place. One side of her face looked like it had melted and been reshaped with wax. Her neck had stitches. Her arms bore symmetrical puncture marks. As if her skin had been removed, cleaned, and sewn back on, Akari screamed, but no sound came out, or rather it did, from the doll. The creature stared at her, and for the first time it smiled with its teeth. With her teeth. Somehow, the replacement was already complete. The doll didn't just want to mimic her, it wanted Akari to be forgotten. The next morning, the neighbors saw Akari on the porch, brushing May's hair with maternal tenderness. She smiled and waved. They all smiled back. The village was at peace, another offering complete. The doll now lives in flesh, and Akari, she's trapped. Sometimes in her daughter's eyes, something flickers, as if May can still hear her inside. A faint whisper from the stitches in her skin, a muffled plea for help, or maybe one last scream of horror. But no one hears. The replacement was perfect. And you, when you look in the mirror tonight, are you sure it's still you in there? If this story gave you chills, like and subscribe before it sees you too. Drop your deepest fear in the comments, or that memory you can't shake. Maybe it can use it. And remember, not everything you lose is gone. Sometimes it just changes faces.